A famous actor cheats on his wife publicly but deeply regrets it when he sees her again on the red carpet years later. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. The golden light of a Los Angeles sunset bathed the sprawling mansion that Jacob Taylor once called home. He leaned back in a plush armchair on the terrace, nursing a glass of scotch. The tabloids sat scattered across the table before him, their headlines screaming his name alongside sordid details of his latest scandal. It wasn't the first time he'd seen his face plastered across a tabloid, and it likely wouldn't be the last. Jacob Taylor had always been Hollywood's golden boy. Box office smashes, legions of fans, and a string of glamorous women. He had it all, but none of them were Sophia. Sophia. The name burned in his mind like an ember refusing to die. His ex-wife, the woman he had dismissed like yesterday's script. She had been his partner through his meteoric rise, a quiet force of support behind the scenes. But Jacob, drunk on fame and the flattery of sycophants, hadn't noticed how much he needed her until it was too late. Their breakup had been a spectacle. Jacob's affair with his co-star had been splashed across every entertainment site, and Sophia had walked away, her head held high, refusing to play the victim. He hadn't expected her to. Sophia was a woman of substance, a rarity in his world of superficiality. Jacob took another sip of his drink, his thoughts spiraling as the shadows grew longer across the terrace. Where had she gone? She had disappeared from the Hollywood scene so completely it was as if she'd never existed. It wasn't until a year later that he caught a glimpse of her. The premiere of Elysium Rising was an extravagant affair, even by Hollywood standards. The red carpet was a sea of glittering gowns, flashing cameras, and perfectly curated smiles. Jacob had reluctantly agreed to attend, his publicist insisting it was good for his image rehabilitation. He was posing for photographs when the crowd erupted into a murmur. Heads turned, and Jacob followed their gazes to the end of the carpet. A sleek black limousine pulled up, and the door opened. Out stepped a vision in emerald green. It was Sophia. She looked radiant, her gown hugging her figure with a grace that only amplified her natural elegance. On her arm was none other than Daniel Blake, Hollywood's most eligible bachelor and the star of Elysium Rising. The two looked every bit the power couple, their chemistry undeniable as they walked the carpet together. Jacob felt his chest tighten, a pang of something uncomfortably close to regret stabbing through him. He hadn't expected her to come back, let alone in such a spectacular fashion. He watched as Sophia and Daniel posed for photos, their smiles dazzling under the camera flashes. When they turned to enter the theater, Sophia's eyes briefly locked with Jacob's. There was no malice in her gaze, no bitterness. Only a calm, measured confidence that sent a chill down his spine. That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. His mind was a whirlwind of memories and questions. How had Sophia risen to the heights of Hollywood royalty? And why was she with Daniel Blake, a man notorious for his selectiveness and mystery? His curiosity turned into obsession. He began scouring the internet for any information about Sophia's sudden re-emergence. What he found left him both awestruck and deeply ashamed. Sophia hadn't just moved on, she had built an empire. Quietly, behind the scenes, she had become a powerhouse in the entertainment industry, funding independent films, producing critically acclaimed projects, and even establishing scholarships for underrepresented talent. Her name was whispered with reverence in industry circles, her influence undeniable. But what truly stung was the discovery that Daniel Blake's rise to superstardom had been largely fueled by Sophia's backing. She had believed in him when others hadn't, funding his breakout film and propelling him into the spotlight. Jacob's chest ached with regret. He had underestimated her, discarded her, and now she had become something far greater than he ever imagined. A week later, Jacob found himself invited to the Elysium Rising after-party. He told himself it was a coincidence, but deep down, he knew it was an excuse to see Sophia again. The party was held at an opulent rooftop venue, its golden lights shimmering against the night sky. Jacob spotted Sophia across the room, surrounded by industry elites. Her laughter floated through the air, her presence magnetic. But what struck him most was the ease with which she carried herself. She didn't just belong in the room, she owned it. Summoning his courage, Jacob approached her. The crowd seemed to part as he neared, their hushed murmurs following him. When he finally stood before her, Sophia turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Jacob," she said, her voice as poised as ever. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same about you," he replied, forcing a smile. "You've changed." Sophia raised an eyebrow. People do that when they're not stuck in the past. Her words stung, but Jacob pressed on. "I just wanted to say, you look amazing. And I'm sorry. For everything." Sophia tilted her head, studying him for a moment before offering a small smile. "Thank you, Jacob. But I'm not the woman you remember. And I'm certainly not interested in being part of your redemption arc." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Jacob standing alone in the sea of Hollywood's elite. For the first time in his life, Jacob Taylor felt truly insignificant. The after-party continued to buzz with life, but Jacob felt frozen in place. Sophia's words had hit him harder than any bad review or industry rejection. She wasn't angry, wasn't bitter. She simply didn't care. He nursed a drink at the edge of the rooftop, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses fading into background noise. Around him, Hollywood's elite chatted and networked, but Jacob was trapped in his thoughts. Seeing Sophia's transformation, her effortless power and grace, was a reminder of everything he had thrown away. The night dragged on, and as the crowd began to thin, Jacob noticed Daniel Blake standing near the bar, chatting with a director. The sight of Daniel stirred something ugly inside him, a mix of jealousy and resentment. Daniel was everything Jacob used to be. Admired, successful, and desired. But what burned the most was knowing that Sophia had helped Daniel become the man he was today. Before he could stop himself, Jacob approached Daniel. "Blake," he said, his tone sharper than he intended. Daniel turned, his easy smile faltering when he saw who it was. "Taylor," he replied coolly. "Didn't think I'd see you here." Jacob forced a grin. "Hollywood's a small town. You and Sophia make quite the pair." Daniel's expression didn't change, but there was an edge to his voice as he said, "She's incredible, isn't she?" Jacob scoffed. "I would know. I was married to her after all." The tension between them crackled, drawing the attention of nearby partygoers. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "You were married to her," Daniel said evenly. "And you threw her away. That's on you, not her." Jacob's grin faded, and for a moment, the two men stared at each other in silence. Then Daniel stepped closer, his voice dropping low enough that only Jacob could hear. "You don't get to play the victim here, Taylor. Sophia doesn't owe you anything. Not her time, not her forgiveness, and definitely not her attention. So if you're here to try and win her back, do yourself a favor and walk away." With that, Daniel turned and walked off, leaving Jacob standing alone once again. In the days that followed, Jacob's obsession with Sophia only grew. He began digging deeper into her life, searching for any scrap of information that might give him insight into how she had built her empire. He learned about the projects she had championed, the careers she had launched, and the causes she had supported. But one detail stood out above the rest: her production company, Silver Phoenix Studios. The name struck him as oddly personal, and the more he thought about it, the more he realized why. Sophia had always loved phoenixes. She used to say they were a symbol of rebirth and resilience, a reminder that even after destruction, something beautiful could rise from the ashes. Jacob couldn't help but wonder if the name was a message, a declaration that she had risen from the ashes of their failed marriage, stronger and more radiant than ever. The realization gnawed at him, filling him with a mix of admiration and regret. He had underestimated her, and now she was soaring while he was stuck in the ruins of his own making. A few weeks later, Jacob received an unexpected invitation. Sophia was hosting a gala to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of Silver Phoenix Studios. The event promised to be a star-studded affair, with the proceeds going toward scholarships for underrepresented talent in the film industry. Jacob hesitated at first, unsure if he should attend. But curiosity, and a lingering sense of guilt, compelled him to RSVP. The night of the gala, Jacob arrived at the venue, a grand Art Deco theater bathed in golden light. The red carpet was packed with celebrities, journalists, and photographers, all eager to celebrate Sophia's achievements. As he stepped inside, Jacob was struck by the opulence of the event. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and tables adorned with gold and silver accents filled the grand hall. A string quartet played softly in the background, adding to the elegance of the evening. But what truly captivated him was Sophia. She stood at the center of the room, radiating confidence in a deep red gown that seemed to shimmer with every movement. Guests flocked to her, eager to shake her hand, pose for photos, or simply bask in her presence. Jacob watched her from a distance, a lump forming in his throat. This was a woman who had rebuilt herself from the ground up, a woman who had found her place in the world without him. And yet, he couldn't stop himself from approaching her. "Sophia," he said softly, his voice almost drowned out by the chatter around them. She turned, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Jacob," she said, her tone polite but distant. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wanted to congratulate you," he stammered. "You've done amazing things, Sophia. You've become everything I always knew you could be." Her expression softened, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "Thank you, Jacob. That means a lot." He hesitated, then added, "I've made a lot of mistakes. But losing you was the biggest one." Sophia tilted her head, studying him for a moment. "It's funny, isn't it," she said, "how people only realize what they had after it's gone." Jacob swallowed hard. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but if there's any way I can make things right." Sophia cut him off with a gentle shake of her head. "Jacob, I don't need you to make things right. I've already done that for myself." Her words were a dagger to his heart, but he forced a smile. "You've done an incredible job," he said. Sophia nodded, then glanced across the room. "Excuse me, Jacob. I have guests to attend to." She walked away, leaving Jacob alone in the crowd. For the rest of the evening, he watched her from a distance, his heart heavy with regret. The gala stretched late into the night, with speeches, auctions, and heartfelt tributes celebrating Sophia's achievements. Guests marveled at her success, her generosity, and the quiet determination that had carried her to the top of Hollywood's elite. But for Jacob, the evening was a painful reminder of what he had lost. As the event drew to a close, the crowd gathered near the stage where Sophia was set to deliver her closing remarks. Jacob lingered near the back, unsure if he could bear to hear her speak, yet unable to leave. Sophia took the stage to a standing ovation. She waited for the applause to die down before she began, her voice steady and clear. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "When I started Silver Phoenix Studios 10 years ago, I had no idea it would lead to a night like this. Back then, I was just a woman trying to rebuild her life, unsure if I had the strength to succeed." Her words hung in the air, and Jacob felt a pang of guilt. He knew he had been part of what she was rebuilding from. "But I learned something important during that time," Sophia continued. "I learned that strength doesn't come from avoiding failure or heartbreak. Comes from embracing it, from using it to fuel your growth and push you forward. Every setback I faced, every person who doubted me, became part of the fire that forged me into who I am today." The audience erupted into applause, but Sophia raised her hand to quiet them. "I want to dedicate this evening to those who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "To the mentors, the friends, and yes, even the critics who shaped my journey. And to everyone here tonight, thank you for supporting the next generation of storytellers. Together, we can ensure that their voices are heard, no matter where they come from or what challenges they face." As she stepped off the stage, The crowd rose to their feet, cheering and clapping. Jacob watched her from the shadows, his chest tight with emotion. He couldn't help but admire her resilience, even as it highlighted his own shortcomings. A week later, Jacob's agent called him with an unusual proposition. "There's a role that might be perfect for you," the agent said. "It's not a blockbuster, but it's a gritty indie film with a lot of heart. The kind of role that could redefine your career." Jacob was skeptical at first, but when he read the script, he couldn't deny its potential. The film told the story of a washed-up actor trying to redeem himself after losing everything. It was painfully close to home. When Jacob asked about the production team, the agent hesitated. "It's being produced by Silver Phoenix Studios." The news hit Jacob like a punch to the gut. Sophia. His first instinct was to decline, but something held him back. This was an opportunity to prove he wasn't the man he used to be. To show Sophia and himself that he could change. Reluctantly, he agreed to audition. The audition was held at a modest studio lot, far from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood's main hubs. Jacob arrived early, his nerves frayed. When he entered the room, he was surprised to find Sophia sitting at the head of the table, flanked by the director and other producers. "Jacob," she said, her tone professional. "Thank you for coming." He nodded, swallowing his nerves. "Thank you for considering me." The audition was grueling. The director pushed Jacob to his limits, forcing him to dig deep into emotions he hadn't tapped into in years. By the end of it, he was physically and emotionally drained. As he left the studio, he couldn't tell if he had succeeded or failed. All he knew was that he had given it everything he had. 2 weeks later, Jacob received the call. He had gotten the role. The production process was unlike anything he had experienced before. Sophia was a constant presence on set, her keen eye and quiet leadership guiding the project. She treated Jacob with professionalism, never letting their past interfere with the work. For Jacob, the experience was both humbling and transformative. The role forced him to confront his own flaws, to acknowledge the pain he had caused and the emptiness of his pursuit of fame. By the time the film wrapped, Jacob felt like a different man. At the film's premiere, Jacob walked the red carpet alone. The event was modest compared to the blockbusters he had once headlined, but it felt more meaningful than any premiere he had attended before. As he posed for photos, he spotted Sophia nearby, radiant as ever. She caught his eye and gave him a small nod, a gesture of acknowledgement if not forgiveness. The film was met with critical acclaim, and Jacob's performance was hailed as a career best. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of pride that wasn't tied to box office numbers or tabloid headlines. After the screening, Jacob found himself standing alone on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. "Jacob," a familiar voice said behind him. He turned to see Sophia, her expression calm but unreadable. "I just wanted to say congratulations," she said. "You gave an incredible performance." "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And thank you for giving me the chance." Sophia studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You earned it." As she walked away, Jacob realized that he didn't need her forgiveness to move forward. He had finally learned to forgive himself. And while he would always regret losing Sophia, he was grateful for the chance to honor her strength by becoming a better man. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.